Hey everybody, and welcome back to Change Your Channel. I'm your host, Carol Redden. With me today is Tina Othon. Thanks for being here, Tina.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited, you guys. Tina has been a friend of the family for, I don't know, probably 35, 40 years at this point.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot that I could say to introduce Tina, but I want to start by just letting her introduce herself because there are so many things. But I want to make sure that you guys know that the reason Tina's here with me today, she's my very first guest of something that I'm calling an everyday life changer, because Tina has gone through quite a bit, like many of us, many of you watching and listening, and has really made some conscious efforts to change her channel by changing her thoughts, feelings, and actions, so that she can have a happier and healthier life. So again, thanks, Tina. Yeah, and I'll turn it over to you to share just a little bit about how you might introduce yourself and a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I want to say I'm so proud of you and what you're trying to do to reach these people. Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm Tina. First and foremost, I am a daughter of the Most High, our Heavenly Father. I'm also a mother of 3 grown, beautiful children and a grandmother of 6 granddaughters. 2 of them I'm raising.
So great.
Yeah, thank you.
Bless your heart.
Yeah, it's my calling, I guess. That's what, I have to do now at these days. A little background about me. I had a wonderful childhood. I had nothing I could complain about, family vacations. I had a strict father, but who didn't, right?
I actually didn't know that about your dad.
A lot of people don't, you know what I mean? That was in home, how a lot of things are, with society. That was in home. But I believe that structure gave me the grounding that I needed to establish who I'm going to be.
Okay.
When I was about 15, my parents, like the statistics that are out there, they got a divorce. And by 16, I went on the wild side. I started living a wild life. My mom, bless her heart, she tried, but I'm strong-willed. So I was like, bye.
Your mom's so sweet. I remember her just always being so sweet. And I just think of your dad as being really funny. So that's interesting to know, disciplinarian.
Oh yeah, very much so. And I went wild and I, started getting in the wrong crowds. And I lived that way for a lot of years.
Really?
Yeah. I'm going to say since I was about 16 until 2013, when I was, I think, 41 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that there are transitions, but time flies, right? And I don't really do the math always, but so when you say you went wild, can you paint a picture a little bit for what that might mean?
Well, that means that I started, drinking and hanging out all hours of the night. School got dropped off. Started experimenting with drugs. By 18, I was working. I had a child, so I was trying to get my life back together, for my oldest. I was working, I was doing good, but then again, I ran into the wrong people where I was working at and started using again drugs. And I'd say by 2021, I was using every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it something? So one of the things I think is helpful to talk about, and I talked about this on a previous episode that will be coming out or might be posted by the time you guys watch this episode, but we talk about a little bit about how sometimes people fall into drugs and alcohol, some sort of addiction. And with most kids, I know, because you and I have worked with kids a lot.
Yes.
There's not a general understanding that, hey, I'm going to try this and then I'll be an addict.
Yeah.
There's always the thought that like, this is fun. This is an escape or this is whatever. And then it turns into an addiction.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what happens. You know what I mean? You're out there partying and you're like, drinking. Okay, I'm going to do this drug, to keep me going with that drinking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, I'm living with a boyfriend who has 2 sisters that sold the drugs. So we were doing it every day. Okay. You know what I mean? It was there readily available, helped you, in my mind back then, helped me motivate me to get up and do this and that, just the normal tweaker stuff. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I don't actually know what normal tweaker stuff is. So can you elaborate on that? Are you comfortable with that?
Well, methamphetamines was the drug of choice. Yeah. I didn't, I wasn't a pothead. I didn't smoke weed. I didn't do pills. I didn't do heroin, anything like that. It was all that trying to be up to try to, do 10,000 things in one day.
Really?
Yeah. And you don't realize because, you're like, oh, I'm going. And then next thing you know, the next day, your body feels like garbage because it had that, that push.
All the toxins.
Yeah, exactly. That false, endorphins and all that. I think those are the words, dopamines. That's what it
Dopamines,
is. Yeah. All that falseness in you. So then you start feeling sick, but the only thing to make you feel better is doing another, hit or line or whatever. I never ingested intravenously, never did that. I just smoked and did lines, but that became every day because I told myself I was sick the next day if I didn't have it.
Oh, well, and so that's another thing I like to talk about. I haven't gotten into drugs, and that's
Amen.
just really a blessing.
Oh yeah.
Listen, because I have, other things, I just haven't gotten into drugs. So, and who knows why. But we get into these mind frames, like you were just saying. I told myself I was sick unless I had it. I find that, I have like chronic pain and some other things, and I will find myself all the time thinking I can't do that because of this.
Yes.
And the pain that I'm talking about, or the limitation I'm giving myself, actually it's from pain that I had 10 years ago or something.
Right.
But it's still a habit in my mind.
Absolutely.
Is that something you think about now? Do you have to think about that every day as you change your channel?
I would absolutely. Really? I think for the rest of my life, it will be a committed decision that I make, like you said, to change my channel every day. When I made the decision, when I finally decided in 2013 that I was done with that lifestyle, it was a big decision. I literally left state because I wanted to go and I moved to New Jersey, left state to make this, a commitment. That commitment was, how should I say this? I didn't stay focused. So I did a little bit of trip ups there. And that's when I reached out to God. I said, Father God, I can't do this myself. You need to help me, literally. He sent me to a church literally a block away from my house.
Really?
Yeah, literally a block away from when I was living. Funny story. I was wanting a cigarette because I smoked back then. And a friend of mine, my fiance at the time, found a bum who literally gave up rolling papers and tobacco. And on the streets, that is a committed, commodity. That's like, you don't give up that stuff. But anyways, they did. And I swore that if I ever seen him again, I would give him whatever dollars I had in my pocket. I never found him, but there was a little church on the end of the street that I went into, and they happened to have service.
Wait a minute. So are you saying that you were trying to get away from drugs?
Yeah.
And you were going to go back and talk to somebody who was engaging in drugs?
Not necessarily engaging in drugs. He was a homeless man. But
he was rolling.
Yeah, he was rolling cigarettes.
Cigarettes, yeah. So something that normally would take you away from, God used to bring you to him.
Yeah, wow. Absolutely. I know, it's amazing. Because I walked into that church, and they are a Seventh-day Adventist, and they, practice on Saturdays. And it was a Saturday, and they were actually having service. And I was like, wait a minute, what? So I sat down, and I literally was in pajama pants, a tank top, hair not brushed, and slippers, but I sat down.
I know you did.
Yeah, that was me. And I sat down, and the minute that it was over, everybody that was, like elders and stuff like that, immediately came over to introduce themselves, to ask my story. I never stopped going.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing, because so in that moment when you said, you moved to New Jersey, so that's a conscious choice.
Yes.
Because I always talk about, for those who aren't familiar yet with Change Your Channel, there's an episode out. My very first episode goes into a little bit of my story and some of the struggles that I've had and experiences. I call them tragedies and traumas that most of us have. And I went through sort of a similar process in terms of going through every day, hoping things would change. And I talk about even going to rehab twice, thinking that would fix me. Thinking that if I took the pills the doctors told me to take, if I saw the right doctors, and in my case, I also have a lot of physical ailments. So if I had this surgery or this procedure, it would just fix me. But the second time I went to rehab, I realized, wait a minute, I have all these resources, and I do think we all have resources available.
Absolutely.
And in your case, it's religion, but we have to choose. Right. So for Change Your Channel, it starts with our thoughts, which it sounds like you did. You
Absolutely.
said, this is not working for me.
Yeah.
The state of life that I'm living, I'm maybe not happy and probably not healthy.
Yep.
And you know that.
Absolutely.
Right? Consciously and subconsciously, we know. And then you can kind of tap into, I don't know if you tapped into your feelings, but I'm very aware that at some point I was not happy most of the time. I was going through the motions, trying to put on a happy face. And some days are easier than others. It isn't until then we look at our thoughts, our feelings, and then take action. And so that sounds like what you did.
That's exactly what I did. I sat there at one of the nights that I was getting high or whatever, and it was so old already. It was so tiring trying to keep up, trying to, find that high and
Yes.
chase. I was tired already, and I'm old. I was like 41 years old. I was done.
Yeah.
And I made that decision. You know what? I don't want to do this no more. This is all my kids have known. Two of my younger children, and my oldest since 5 years old. That's all they've known me as, you know what I mean? Is this addict, this person that's always trying to live the party life and this and that. I was done. I made that decision. And then when I seen that it was a little bit too overwhelming, maybe, because sometimes that can happen. You know what I mean? When you make those decisions, those are big steps that you're taking. As you were saying, there's resources out there. For me, it was turning my life to God and letting him make those changes in me that I needed him to make because I wasn't strong enough to do it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people need support.
Oh yeah.
That's something I talk about. I was talking with Kimberly Kingsley. She was on my show. She has a website, kimberlykingsley.com, and she helps people talk about their energy and their flow. And we were talking, I think it was with her, we were talking about how we're perfect just as we are in any given moment, because even though if you were in the middle of doing drugs, you're not doing what is fulfilling for you. If you hadn't gone through that, you wouldn't be where you are now. And you wouldn't be so close to God.
Amen.
Right? If you hadn't struggled, you wouldn't have needed to reach out to him. So I don't know. And I'm curious to ask you, because you guys said, this is where I was. Do you think in those moments when you're using every day, do you think you thought of yourself as perfect just the way you are?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Not one bit. And I didn't think there was much wrong with me in a sense. Like, I'm like, well, everybody wants to label an addict and this and that. And it's like, you know what, why? I'm, doing this and I'm doing that. But yeah, no, in reality, that's not the case. You know what I'm saying?
You're like, I'm still working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm number one. And I put makeup on so they can't tell that I'm actually, a tweaker.
Like Charlie Sheen.
Right.
Sorry if you're watching, Charlie, because obviously you're watching my show, but winning. No, and
yeah, exactly.
I definitely don't mean to make fun of or make light of it, but I think for you, maybe it's drugs. For somebody else, maybe it's sex. For somebody
alcoholism,
else,
gambling. It's all kinds that are out there with today's society that has been implemented in everyday norms, but that technically really aren't.
Yeah.
And they're not going to find the joy and the peace that they might be looking for inside of those things.
Well, and so that brings me to two follow-up questions I have, and I'm putting you on the spot. So if you're not comfortable answering them, you can say pass or anything. Do you think, was there one moment or a series of moments that prompted you to turn to the drugs in the first place? Because for a lot of people, I think it's traumatic events, and it doesn't sound like you necessarily had some like one big thing or two big things. Right. I mean, it may have been a challenging situation, but can you pinpoint one or two things that might have led you?
Then when I look back on it, I don't know if it's maybe statistics putting it into my mind to make me think, but if I realize it, it was after my mom and dad got a divorce.
That's what it's.
You know what I mean?
That is a trauma.
And I didn't think it was at the time, what I'm saying, but a 15-year-old almost going on 16, they're not going to think that in their heads. You know what I mean? We're just going to, live it up, whatever, but I think maybe that might've been that traumatic experience that started my progress on going down the path that I did.
Yeah. Because maybe it reevaluates your identity. Yeah. In terms of here's this whole life I knew for the last 15 years, and some parts are great or better than others and whatever, but I know what it looks like. And then you have this disruption to your being. Yes. Right. And as a kid, because my parents, divorced when I was like 7. So I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to. So I'm always curious about that. And then this is probably the more difficult question, but as you were talking, you said that's when most of your kids, they've only known you up until the time you gave your life to God and changed. Is there anything that you can think of? Do you think your lifestyle impacted them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, with my lifestyle, I made, you don't make good decisions. You don't. Okay. And I wanted my oldest at about 13, I let her go live with my mom. Okay. I never lost custody of my children. I never was in custody battles or, with CPS involved. That was just conscious decisions. I thought that they would have a better life with my mom. My son also at about the same age, he asked to live with his grandmother on his father's side. I allowed that. And then my youngest, she stayed with me the whole time, and now she battles her own, struggles,
Sure.
without going too much into her
Sure.
story, because it's
Yeah,
hers, you know what I mean?
exactly.
So I would say absolutely every aspect of my decisions and my actions throughout their life affected them. Absolutely.
And I can appreciate that, because I think as a parent, and I've not, that I've not been a parent, but I think that as a parent, certainly kids are watching, even if they're not saying, they're watching our behaviors, right? And they're watching choices that we make, and they're watching ways that we live our lives. I do know some parents who've had similar stories, and they say that, they're just overwhelmed with guilt and maybe
Yes. Oh,
shame.
yeah. Absolutely. That is something that I pray for God to take away from me almost daily, because at night, how anybody at night, when we're laying there, we all get those thoughts going, and
Yeah.
everybody's got their own demons that, portray in their head. Mine have always been what I've done to my children throughout all them years, the life that I could have given them so much better because of the decisions. If I would have made better ones, let the drugs go, I do with that. But with God being in my life, I know that at the cross, when Jesus was crucified, my sins were forgiven. So now what I need to ask God is to heal me, to take away that guilt and shame, because I don't need to live in that. I don't. You know what I'm saying? I no offense to my children or nothing like that. I'm not trying to lessen anything that they might experience.
Yeah.
But for me, I have to give that up because I've been forgiven.
I would agree. And I'm holding this book here, Sonja Lyubomirsky's. It's called The How of Happiness. And you can see on my little tabs there. The reason I'm holding it is because one of the things I love about this book, it's not just like put a smile on your face and you'll be happy. She talks about something called happiness work. And one of the ways that people can do happiness work would be to tap into religion. And that's why it made me think of your story. And as I think about it, and as I hear you say that, and I appreciate your honesty, I think probably most of us carry around what I call a shame backpack. I know I did, and for different reasons. I carried one based on things that happened to me, different abuses that I suffered. I carried shame thinking it was for me to carry. And it isn't really until I started learning how to change my own channel that I thought, you know what? It isn't, I don't have to forgive other people necessarily, meaning let them off the hook, right, for whatever happened. But I can let it go because it's not doing anybody any good. As if I continue to walk around with my 50-pound, and if it grows over time and I let it grow and grow, I become a different person that is less able to help other people. And
because you're carrying all that baggage, so to speak.
So it's really a gift, not just for myself, but for the people around me to say, you know what, I'm not going to carry it anymore. Yeah. And the other thing I would want to point out, I know that you followed my Facebook page, which is Change Your Channel. If you want to follow it on Facebook. One of the things I put on there is this vibrational chart. For those who aren't familiar, that's one of the things I stumbled on when I started doing research. And I found it really helpful. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but it's basically, it could be a triangle, or it's just, layers, if you will. And at the very bottom, it's an energy. All of them are energies. It's a scale of energies. And basically, whatever energy we're living in, we're giving out to other people.
Absolutely.
So that's when I say tap into your feelings, that's what I'm saying. Tap into where you are on that scale. And shame is at the bottom. That means if we're living in shame,
we got to climb up above it. We got to climb out of it. Absolutely.
Exactly. And a lot of people think, if you look at that vibrational scale, doesn't matter which one you look at. I'm going to go ahead and put this scale on so it doesn't fall off. If you look at the vibration scale, love is toward the top and enlightenment is at the top. Of course. And I think there's a misconception that people think it's either easy to get out of shame, or you can easily go from the bottom to the top, but it's not. Yeah. And sometimes you can take steps up and fall back down. But I have experienced this just in trying. It helps me to visualize that vibrational scale and check in with my thoughts and my feelings. And if I find myself feeling in a space of shame, I think of that scale and I think that's not where I want to be. So then I climb up a little bit. Right. And I would say to anybody watching or listening, if you're in that super dark place, as I have been, and maybe you are or have been, it's possible to just change, even if you change a little bit, even if you go from just shame to anger at whatever happened, that's a win. Yes. Yeah.
Because you're making a progress. You're making
Uh-huh.
that step up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to be big, giant steps whatsoever. It's never that way, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's always going to be one, like they say, literally, it's one day at a time. It's sometimes 1 minute at a time. It's always about moving forward, though. If you, you know, you have to take yourself out of the past for sure, because we're not living in the past. We're living in for our future and the present for the future. So you have to get out of there.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is one of the posts also that I've been thinking of is worry is one of those things that keeps us stuck in the past or the future. And then we can't focus on the present, which is the people around us, the love that we want to experience or the bonds that we want to make. We can't. So, well, there are a few more questions I'd like to ask, but I also want to think about time. As you think about, because I know for me, I have to change my channel every day.
Yes.
All day.
Yes.
Because I still have, again, my episode talks about some of the things I went through, and you'll notice that we're not going into a lot of detail about who did what to us and exactly this, that, because I don't think the focus should be on the negativity, right? The focus should be on where we're going now and what we're learning.
And how we're going to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. The action that we're going to take. But I still have really down days. Even I might even wake up like that.
Yep.
But it's not as long as it used to be. I used to have many, many days, like months in a row where it was very dark and I just couldn't barely function. Because I'm mindful, I have fewer days like that. And then when I do have them, it's not the whole day.
Yes.
Do you have that too?
I have to tell myself, well, for me, I spend every morning with God. I abide in Jesus. I start literally with, we're all about our phones. So, the first thing I do is reach over for my phone and I'm reading my daily subscriptions of some kind of verse from the Bible. And then I literally go into the Bible and I pray. That's how I start my day. Now, I start my day that way because I want it to carry with me throughout the day. Society and life doesn't make that happen all the time. Yeah. So then, like you said, with changing my channel, for me, I'm reaching back into God saying, oh, this is some past stuff that needs to be healed. Take it away from me, please, so I don't stay there. You know what I mean? Because I'm one of those that are like a worry ward. So I have got a lot of anxieties where I'm thinking about all this stuff that happened, is going to happen, and I can't live there. I can't because it will, I've got children to take care of and I have to be a whole different person.
And we can't change the past.
Yeah.
So any investment in time we spend on the past is lost.
Yes.
We don't get it back.
Yes, this is true.
Yeah. Well, I just think that it's helpful for us to talk about some of the things that you're doing. And I like that you said that you start your day
absolutely
with that strategy that works for you. For other people, and Sonja's book talks about this, some of the strategies. Again, religion is one of them. For some people, it's exercise. This is not yet my thing, but I would like it to be more. So I'm mindful of that. For other people, it might just be connecting, volunteering and helping. There are a lot of things that we can do. And even if it's just a little more or a little different, and I want to be the first to say when I was first going through my transformation, I wasn't able to take action. I didn't have the energy. I just didn't have it in me. I had to start with just my thoughts. So if you're in that space, and you can even just start being mindful of what you're thinking. What are those habits that you're telling yourself, and do they still apply? Right. And tapping into your feelings. Where are you on the spectrum of energy, that energy you're putting out and then maybe getting back? I think that's helpful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You've got to make that decision first and foremost. And if they're little, tiny, minute steps, at least they're being taken.
That's right. Yeah. And the one thing that I want to do before we close, and I'm putting you on the spot, is, and you can go back to something you've already shared. I'd like to ask all of my guests, if somebody was listening or watching and they thought, oh, that sounds good. That's whatever. She found God. Amen.
Right.
But maybe that doesn't work for them, and that's okay.
Right.
Whatever works for everybody is fine. If they were watching and said, I can do one thing. So if there was just the one next thing or the one best thing that you could tell people that might help them change their channel, what would you say?
Love yourself.
Ooh.
Just love yourself. I mean, as hard as that might be, because of all the things you've gone through and all the guilt and shame that you might have experienced that makes you think you're not worthy, you are. Love yourself.
I love that. And I watch a few different people, and one of the people I watch is Marissa Peer.
Mhm.
She prompted me to put in my phone, and I know this seems weird because I'm teaching also too, and then my alarm will go off, not with sound, but the alarm is for me to
Mhm.
put in my brain. It says I am worthy,
Amen.
and things are always working out for me.
Yes.
It's just to proactively change my channel, only because if I don't put that in, then other things can play themselves out.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. You want to fill yourself with the positive and put out the negative.
Ooh, well, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it with what Tina said. So thanks everybody for watching and listening. Thank you, Tina, for
Absolutely.
joining
Thank
us.
you for having me.
Yeah. And for those of you who'd like more content on Change Your Channel, you can find us on www.changeyourchannel.life. You can subscribe to my weekly-ish newsletter. I get that out as soon as I can every week. And also you can catch us on Facebook right now. It's just Change Your Channel. Thanks everybody, and I hope you have a great day. I'll see you at the next episode.